It was 11:15 on a Tuesday night, and I was standing in my hallway with the lights off, trying to decide whether what I was seeing was real. The app was open on my phone. His profile was right there on the screen. It said he was 2 miles away. That number had barely changed in 2 weeks of conversation. 2 miles, consistent, reassuring even. But 20 minutes earlier, he had texted me a photo of himself in a gray zip-up hoodie, sleeves pushed to the elbow, standing somewhere he said was his parking garage at home. And now there was a man in that exact hoodie standing at the entrance to my building's parking lot. He wasn't moving. He wasn't on his phone. He wasn't waiting for a ride. He was just standing there with his hands in his front pocket, looking up at the building. At the floor I was on. The app still said 2 miles. I didn't move from the hallway. I pressed myself against the wall next to the window and watched him through the narrowest gap I could make in the blind. And I understood, in a very quiet and specific way, that the number on the app had never been about where he actually was. Welcome to Mind After Dark. What you're about to hear are 5 accounts submitted to us by ordinary people about situations they say actually happened to them through online dating platforms. Names, cities, and identifying details have been changed to protect their privacy. These stories are presented as allegedly true and have not been independently verified by this channel. No paranormal events, no impossible technology, just people. And the things people do when they've decided someone else's life is something they're entitled to access. Let's go back to the beginning. Story 1, 2 miles away. The profile took me about 40 minutes to put together, which I think says something about how seriously I was taking it. I'm an analyst by training. I look at data for a living. Patterns, inconsistencies, things that don't line up the way they should. My friend Dana had been sending me screenshots of men she thought I'd like for about 3 months before I finally caved and made a profile. I was 28, living alone in a 2-bedroom apartment in a mid-sized Midwestern city, and I had been in that city for just over a year. I wasn't desperate. I was just realistic. I was careful with the photos, or I believed I was careful. I chose 3 images where my face was clearly visible, but my background wasn't. No street signs, no window views, no landmarks that could place me on a map. I kept my employer vague, listed as data services, and chose a broad neighborhood label rather than a specific one. I had read enough articles to know the basics of what not to do. He matched with me within a day. His name was listed as Marcus. His profile was ordinary in the way that takes effort to achieve. 3 photos, one at a cookout with other people partially visible, one near water that could have been a dozen different lakes, and one plain headshot taken against a white wall. The kind of photo a person takes when they want to seem unguarded rather than posed. He listed his job as a project coordinator for a commercial construction company. He said he'd lived in the area about 4 years, age 31. Our first few messages were awkward in the way that genuine first messages usually are. He noticed a book on the shelf in one of my photos. I'd posted a tight headshot where the shelf was barely visible in the corner and asked about it. I said it was a mystery novel I'd been stalled on for 2 months. He said he had a thriller he'd bought in an airport 3 years ago that was still sitting on his nightstand with the receipt still in it. I laughed at that. It was an easy start. He messaged every day or 2. Never more than that. Never in a way that felt urgent or demanding. He asked follow-up questions. Real ones. Not the automated feeling prompts people use when they're not actually listening. When I mentioned that I tended to walk to work in decent weather, he asked about it the next day. When I said I had a regular coffee shop near the office, He asked if it was the kind of place with good pastries, or the kind that treated pastries as an afterthought. I said the latter, unfortunately. I told him my neighborhood by general area. I told him my commute was about 15 minutes on foot. I told him the coffee shop was close to my office. I told him I walked the same route most mornings. None of those things felt like location data when I was saying them. Assembled, they were exactly that. Around day 10, we talked about meeting. I suggested the following Thursday, a wine bar in a busy part of the city, public, familiar to me. He agreed without negotiating the location, which I noticed and appreciated. 2 nights before we were supposed to meet, he sent a casual photo. He was in a gray zip-up hoodie, standing in what looked like a covered parking structure or a low-ceiling deck. He said he'd just gotten back from the gym and was heading in. The message came in at 9:48 p.m. I said goodnight. At 10:31, he sent a follow-up. Quiet night for you. I said, yeah, just watching something, almost ready for bed. He said, looked like you had your lights on earlier. Relaxing night in, sounds like. I read that sentence 4 times. I had not mentioned my lights. I had not sent any photos that evening. We'd been texting, only nothing visual. The word earlier was what caught in my chest. Not sounds like a relaxing night, but looked like you had your lights on. Observation phrasing. Present tense visual information embedded in past tense. I know how language works. That sentence was describing something seen. I went to the living room window. I moved carefully, staying out of direct sight lines, and looked through the gap between the blind and the window frame. There was a man standing at the far edge of the parking lot near the building entrance. Gray hoodie, sleeves pushed up, hands in his front pocket, facing the building. The app said 2 miles. I went to the kitchen window, which faces a different angle, and looked again. He was still there, not moving, not checking his phone, not doing anything a person normally does while standing outside at 11 o'clock at night, just standing and looking up. I called Dana instead of 911. I'm aware that sounds like the wrong decision, but I was not certain enough of what I was seeing to make a police report, and I know what it feels like to second-guess yourself when you're a woman trying to determine whether your fear is proportionate. Dana answered on the 3rd ring. I told her, in a low voice, exactly what I was looking at. She told me to check that my door was locked. It was, and to call the building's after-hours number immediately. The after-hours line went to voicemail. I left a message describing a man watching my unit from the parking lot and asking whether there was a security patrol I could reach. Then I texted Marcus. I said, "Hey, still awake?" He replied within a minute, "Yeah, just finished up, about to head in." I said, "Where are you right now?" He said, "Home, just got back." "Why?" I said, "Thought I heard something outside. Probably nothing." He said, "You okay?" I looked through the gap again. He had his phone out now. The screen was lit up. My phone buzzed. Marcus had sent, "I'm sure it's fine. Old buildings make noise." I had never told him my building was old. While I was processing that, something worse happened. The lobby buzzer went off. The one that sounds when someone in the outer vestibule is trying to reach a specific unit. My unit's buzzer. One long press, then nothing. I did not answer it. About 3 minutes later, I checked the window again. He was no longer at the edge of the parking lot. He was closer. He was standing near the base of the stairwell that led up the outside of the building toward the 2nd floor walkway. My apartment was on the 2nd floor. He did not try to climb the stairwell. He just stood near it. I called Dana back and told her to come now. She was already in her car. She'd stayed on the line after I'd hung up to call the building. The next 22 minutes were the most specific 22 minutes of my life. I stayed in the interior hallway, away from all exterior walls and windows. I kept the phone in my hand. Marcus texted once more. "Getting late. Talk tomorrow?" I did not respond. The buzzer did not go off again. At 11:38, Dana knocked on my door in the pattern we'd agreed on. 3 knocks, pause, 2. I looked through the peephole, verified it was her, and opened the door. When we went to the window together, the parking lot was empty. He was gone. I unmatched Marcus the next morning. He sent one message through the app. I saw the notification before the block went through that said, "Everything okay?" I read it and put the phone face down on the counter. The following week, I went through every photo I'd posted publicly and tried to reconstruct what he could have used. The image I'd taken in my apartment, the tight headshot with the bookshelf behind me, had been posted to a personal Instagram account that was technically public. That post was location tagged. The tag wasn't precise, but it placed me within 2 blocks of my building. Between that and my commute time, the coffee shop proximity, and the walking route information I'd given him over 10 days of conversation, narrowing it down would have taken an afternoon and a willingness to walk a few streets. I made the Instagram private. I stripped location metadata from my camera settings. I deleted every public photo that contained a visible building, street sign, or identifiable background. Dana helped. It took us 3 hours. 2 weeks after that, I mentioned what had happened to my building manager when I was in the office about an unrelated maintenance request. I described Marcus, his height, the gray hoodie, the build. She got quiet. She said that about a week before that night, a man matching that description had come to the front desk during office hours. He'd said he was trying to reach a friend who lived in the building and that he wasn't sure which unit. He'd described the friend as a young woman with dark hair who worked in the data field. He'd asked which floor most of the 1-bedroom units were on. She told him she couldn't share that information. He thanked her pleasantly and left. About a week before I ever looked through that blind, while we were already talking, and before the buzzer ever went off, he had been to my building in person, asking questions, while our conversation still felt completely ordinary. The old building comment hadn't been a guess. He had stood in that lobby and looked at the walls and the floors and the way the place was built. He knew what it sounded like because he'd been inside it. Story 2. The man from the photos. I want to be clear about something before I start. I'm not an easy mark. I work in logistics management. I spend my days catching discrepancies in systems that other people miss. I say this because what happened to me was not the result of being gullible. It was the result of someone spending 3 weeks building a specific version of reality that was designed to hold up under reasonable scrutiny. Her name was listed as Claire. Red hair, light freckles, a photo at a state park, and 2 others that looked like a normal person's camera roll. Nothing overproduced. Her bio was 3 lines and made me laugh. She worked in healthcare administration, liked hiking, was openly terrible at picking movies. I matched with her on a Wednesday evening, and we started talking the same night. She was sharp. Her messages were quick, well-phrased, and genuinely funny. She asked questions about my job in a way that proved she'd actually read my answers rather than scanning them. She remembered things. When I mentioned in week 1 that I had a running streak going on a fitness app, she asked 3 days later how the streak was holding up. Small stuff, but consistent. It built something that felt like genuine attention. She avoided video calls. The first time I suggested one, she said her Wi-Fi was unreliable. The second time, she was at her parents' house for a long weekend. The third time, she said she was exhausted and looked, in her words, like a haunted Victorian child, and refused on principle. I let it go. I'd once avoided a video call for 2 weeks over a bad haircut. I understood. She also asked a lot of questions about my life that I answered without thinking twice. My neighborhood, my gym schedule, what I drove, whether I had family nearby or was independent in the city. She framed it as getting to know you conversation, and it just happened to also be a systematic inventory of my habits and my vulnerabilities, and I didn't notice the difference until it was too late to matter. We agreed to meet on a Thursday, a brewery downtown that I'd mentioned going to before. She said she'd been once and liked it. I got there early, sat at a high top near the front windows where I could see both the entrance and the street, ordered a water, and checked my phone at 6:47. She texted, 5 minutes away, almost there. I texted back and set the phone on the table face up. A man sat down across from me at 6:53. He was around 40, heavy set, blue fleece jacket, completely at ease in the way that people are when they've decided the situation belongs to them. He settled into the chair like he'd reserved it, set his coat over the back, and looked at me directly. He said, "You're Ryan." I said yes, and that I thought he had the wrong table. He said he didn't think so. He said Claire wasn't coming. He placed a business card on the table and slid it toward me. His name was Derek. He said he was a private investigator, that a family member had retained him after a similar situation, and that he'd been monitoring the fake Claire profile for approximately 2 months. The card looked legitimate, a firm name, a local address, a direct number, nothing obviously wrong with it. He said the photos in Claire's profile belonged to a real woman in Portland who had no knowledge of how they were being used. He said several other men from this city had been matched with the same profile over the past several months. He said the in-person meeting was likely the next step in whatever plan they'd been building toward me specifically. Then he said he needed me to unlock my phone and let him see the full conversation history. He said it would help establish a pattern for the investigation. I picked up the card and said, "Give me 1 second." I pulled out my phone like I was going to verify the firm. What I actually did was text my friend Daniel. We'd agreed before I left that he'd call me at 7 o'clock and that I'd keep the call going as long as needed if I needed a visible lifeline. The text I sent said, "Call now, not 7. Derek was watching me type. He said he understood I might be uncomfortable, that this was a lot to process. But that time was a factor because the person running the profile was likely observing the situation in real time and would adjust if things stalled. I told him I wasn't going to hand over my unlocked phone to someone I'd just met. His expression stayed even. He said that was reasonable and that there was another option. There was someone outside he wanted me to look at, someone connected to the profile operation who was positioned near the parking area. He said if I could come outside for 2 minutes and confirm whether I recognized the person, that would be enough for now. I said I'd rather stay where I was. He leaned forward slightly. He said, "Ryan, I'm trying to help you. The longer we sit here, the harder this gets." That was when my phone lit up. Not Daniel. He wasn't fast enough yet. It was a message from Claire's account. It said, "Derek isn't who he says he is. I'm at the back entrance. Come out through the kitchen hallway alone, and I can explain everything. Don't tell the staff." I read it twice. Then I read Derek's posture. Then I looked at the message again. Derek was pressuring me to leave through the front. Claire's account was pressuring me to leave through the back. Both stories were different. Both instructions ended in the same place. Me, outside, away from the people around me, alone. I put the phone face down on the table and looked up at the server who'd taken my water order. She was nearby, restocking something at the service station. I caught her eye and kept my voice quiet and level. I said I was having a situation at my table and asked whether there was a manager available to stand close by for a few minutes. She didn't hesitate. She was back inside 90 seconds with a tall man in a black polo who introduced himself as the floor manager. He positioned himself about 8 feet away and stayed there, not staring, just present. Derek noticed. Something went out of his face, not anger, more like a door closing. My phone rang. Daniel. I answered it, said his name out loud, and told him I was at the brewery and that everything was fine, but that I'd call him back in a few minutes. I said it clearly enough that Derek could hear both the name and the fact that someone outside the building now knew exactly where I was. Derek said I was making this more complicated than it needed to be. He said he'd give me his card again in case I changed my mind. I told him I already had it. He gathered his coat and walked out through the front. The floor manager tracked him to the door and then stepped outside briefly. He came back in and told me there was a second man who had been near the bike rack out front, ordinary looking, phone out, who had moved around the side of the building toward the rear when Derek emerged. The manager said he'd gone back and checked the rear exit, and the man had continued around to the alley. Both exits covered until I used staff. I sat at that table for another 20 minutes with a second glass of water and let the floor manager know he could step away whenever he was ready. I called Daniel back and explained the condensed version. He said he was coming to drive me home, which I let him do. The next morning I called the investigator's firm listed on Derek's card. The woman who answered confirmed the firm was real. When I described the man and the card, she said the Derek listed on that card hadn't worked there in over 2 years. She said his credentials had been current during his time with the firm, and that it was possible he'd kept old materials. I found the real Claire, the woman whose photographs were used, through a reverse image search that took about 40 minutes. She was active on social media under a different name, and I sent her a brief message explaining what I could. She responded within a day. She said her photos had been used across multiple platforms for months, and she'd been dealing with it intermittently. She had never hired any investigator. She had never been contacted by anyone named Derek in connection with her images. She said 2 other men had reached out to her in the previous 4 months with similar accounts of being matched with her face. She was tired and frustrated and kind about it, which made the whole thing feel more real than it had even inside the brewery. I spent time afterward trying to determine what the actual objective had been. Unlocking my phone would have given access to banking apps, passwords, stored payment information. Going outside alone, through either exit, would have placed me in a position where the second man was already waiting. Derek's claim that he was investigating on behalf of a family member could have been a way to build enough credibility to walk me out the front. Claire's message about the back entrance was the fallback if I resisted Derek. 2 routes to the same result. Whether it was robbery, access to financial accounts, something else, I can't say for certain what would have happened if I'd stood up and walked out. I just know the plan required me to do that, and it had 2 separate people pushing me toward it simultaneously. The final message from Claire's account arrived while I was still sitting in the brewery, before I'd even processed what had just happened. I'd nearly missed it in the earlier rush. It said, "Blue Civic, right? 3rd row." That was my car, 3rd row from the entrance. They'd known which vehicle was mine before I ever walked through the door. Story 3. The Perfect Gentleman. My divorce was finalized in January. I want to say that plainly because I think context matters, and I'm not interested in making myself sound more fragile than I was. I was 34, working in hospital administration, raising a 7-year-old with the kind of focused efficiency that leaves very little room for anything else. I had a therapist I trusted. I was doing okay. I just wanted to remember what it felt like to have dinner with someone who wasn't a coworker or another parent from my daughter's school. A friend took my profile photos herself, careful ones. Nothing that showed my building, my car, or my daughter. My daughter didn't appear anywhere on the profile. That was decided before anything else. His name was Thomas. 41, commercial real estate. 1 hiking trail photo and 2 from what looked like a professional function. His profile said he'd been out of a long relationship for about 2 years and wasn't looking to rush into anything. That felt honest in a way that longer, more polished profiles sometimes don't. We talked for 12 days. He was a good conversationalist, attentive in a specific way, asking follow-ups that proved he was tracking what I actually said. When I mentioned I was particular about parking, because my car had been hit twice in covered structures, he came back to it the next day and asked if I'd worked out a better system yet. Small things, remembered accurately. I appreciated it. The first detail I couldn't explain appeared in the 3rd or 4th day of conversation. I'd mentioned my usual coffee order, an Americano with oat milk, which is specific enough that it doesn't come up unless you've asked. And he referenced it 2 days later when we were talking about morning routines. The problem was that I went back and checked our messages, and I hadn't mentioned it to him. I'd mentioned it to a friend in a voice note, and I'd ordered it at my regular coffee shop the week before. I had not typed it into the app. I told myself I'd forgotten, that I must have said it somewhere in the flow of conversation and not noticed when I scrolled back. People miss things. I moved on. The restaurant suggestion came from him. A newer Italian place downtown with decent reviews. Specific, well-chosen, somewhere I'd quietly wanted to try. A week earlier, I had mentioned wanting to try it in a story on a private social account that only approved followers could see. I had not named it in our messages. He suggested it casually, like it was simply a natural choice for the area, and at the time I accepted it just as casually. He was already outside when I arrived. He held the door, well-dressed in a way that looked easy. He shook my hand and said it was genuinely good to finally meet me, and his voice matched the tone of the messages exactly, which sounds like a small thing but felt significant. Dinner was good. He was funny and self-aware, didn't overorder, asked about my work without making it an intake form. When my daughter came up, I was the one who mentioned her. He kept it light and moved on when I moved on. He nursed 1 glass of wine through the entire meal. He did not lean across the table, did not check his phone, did not try to extend the evening past the point where I was clearly wrapping up. When I said I should head home, he said, of course, without a flicker of disappointment. He walked me to the parking deck. My car was on the 3rd level. I had said nothing about where I'd parked. As we came up the ramp and past the 2nd floor landing, he slowed slightly and said, "Up 1 more, right?" He caught himself and said something about assuming the upper levels were usually emptier. I said, "Sure." I said goodnight at my car and drove home. On the drive, I ran the evening back 3 times. The Americano I hadn't mentioned, the restaurant from my private story, the parking floor, each thing individually was small enough to explain away. Assembled, they were a picture of someone who knew more about my daily life than 12 days of dating app messages could have produced. I didn't want to be the woman who talked herself out of something pleasant over coincidence, but the parking floor wasn't a guess based on probability. He'd known. I didn't text him goodnight. He texted me at 10:40. Really enjoyed that. No pressure, but I'd like to do this again. I replied that I'd had a good time and left it there. Nothing committed. I sent him a brief, honest message 2 days later. I said I'd had a genuinely nice evening, but didn't feel a romantic connection and wanted to be upfront about it. He responded in under 2 minutes. Totally understand. Take care of yourself. Warm, immediate, utterly detached. No question about what had changed. No attempt to revisit. Just gone, like a tab closing. The smoothness of it was what stayed with me. I'd expected at least a follow-up. Something. I went back to my normal routine. Gym on Tuesday and Thursday mornings. Office by 8:30. Coffee from the shop on the north side. I told myself I'd overreacted to a collection of small coincidences, and for about a week, I almost believed it. On a Thursday morning, 3 weeks after the date, I pulled into the parking garage at my office building at 8:12 a.m. and took the elevator to level 3, where I always park when the lower levels are full. I walked toward my usual row, and Thomas was standing near the elevator bay. He was dressed for a workday. He looked up when he heard me, and his expression moved into something that registered as pleasant surprise, the kind that's slightly too smooth to be real. He said, "Oh, hey, small world." I stopped about 15 feet from him. My coworker Diane was parking 2 rows over. I could hear her car door. Thomas said he had a client whose office was in this building and that he'd been coming here for months. He said he almost texted me when he realized the overlap, but then thought that might seem like he was pushing after I'd said I wasn't feeling it. He smiled when he said that, relaxed, self-deprecating, reasonable. I said, "We didn't arrange this." He said, "Of course not, just a coincidence." He didn't want to make it weird. I said his name clearly and said I was going to go ahead inside now. Diane had appeared at the end of the row. I made eye contact with her and moved in her direction and said her name. She came over without me having to explain anything. Something in my face was enough. Thomas said something easy and forgettable. "Take care. No hard feelings," and went to the elevator. I waited until the elevator closed before I let myself exhale. Diane stayed with me until we were through the building's main door. In the lobby, I told her the condensed version. She said she'd seen his car, a silver BMW, in the guest section of that same garage on a Tuesday the week before, and she'd noticed it because it was backed into a spot facing the exit in a way that gave a clear view of the pedestrian walkway from level 3. I went to the parking attendant that afternoon. His name was Carl, and he worked the morning shift 5 days a week. I described Thomas and described the silver BMW. Carl said the car had been in the guest section 4 times in the past 3 weeks, always in the morning, always gone before 10. He said the first time it appeared, the man driving it had rolled down the window and asked what time the morning rush typically cleared on the upper levels and whether most of the regulars parked in assigned spots or general. Carl said he'd found it odd enough to remember. The first visit to that garage had been the Tuesday after our dinner. The Tuesday, I'd thought he was simply gone. After the garage encounter, I reviewed the followers on that private account one by one. There was a nearly blank account I did not recognize. No posts, no real profile photo, and a creation date from the week before Thomas and I matched. I must have approved it without looking closely. By the time I checked again after filing the building report, the account had disappeared. I cannot prove Thomas controlled it, but it explained how the restaurant detail could have reached him without appearing anywhere in our messages. I made a report with my building security office and filed an incident report with my employer's HR department, both for documentation. The security supervisor told me, without going into detail, that another woman in the building had flagged a similar situation involving a man she'd met through a dating platform. Same composure, same claim of coincidence at a second location. She hadn't pursued it formally. I don't know how many profiles Thomas maintained, or how wide his pattern was. I know he prepared for our date using information he had no legitimate way to possess, that the restaurant he suggested came from a private story that should have been visible only to approved followers, and that he was in my parking garage 2 days after I ended contact with him. The first time without my knowledge, and then once more when he wanted me to see him there. He never raised his voice. He never made a direct threat. He shook my hand at the beginning of the date and said it was genuinely good to finally meet me. That's the detail I come back to. Finally. Like he'd been looking forward to it for longer than 12 days of messages could account for. My daughter thinks I've taken a break from the apps. I've told her I'm just busy, which is also true. She doesn't need to know the rest of it, and she won't. Story 4. Someone was still using my account. I'm going to be direct because that's how I function. I work in financial analysis. I track discrepancies for a living. I document things carefully, I verify before I conclude, and when something doesn't add up, I follow the chain until I find where it breaks. I say this not to sound impressive, but to explain why what happened to me was specifically designed to stay one step ahead of someone who was paying attention. I deleted the app in November. Things were going well with Andrea, someone I'd met through a mutual friend, and the app felt like clutter I didn't need anymore. I went into settings, found the deactivation option, selected it, and uninstalled. Clean. In January, a woman I'd never heard of sent me a message through my personal Instagram. Her name was displayed, her account was clearly real, and her message was blunt. She said she'd matched with me, they'd made plans, and I'd stood her up. She wanted to know why I'd bothered, if I wasn't going to follow through. I wrote back and explained that I'd deactivated my account in November and hadn't opened the app since. She sent a screenshot. The profile was mine, my photos, my first name, my original bio, unchanged. The activity timestamp showed it as active within the previous 7 days. Someone had restored the account from deactivation and been running it under my identity. I downloaded the app, went through account recovery using my original credentials, and got back in. The match history had been cleared. The message threads were gone. My photos were intact. Someone had gotten in, restored the account, erased the record of what they'd done with it, and continued using my face. I changed the password, enabled two-factor authentication, and deactivated again. I messaged the woman who'd contacted me and explained. She remained skeptical, which made sense from her side. She'd matched with someone, made plans, and been left without explanation. 3 days later, a second message arrived through a different platform. A man named Greg. He said we'd been talking for nearly 2 weeks, that the conversation had felt genuine, and that the last message, where I had given him an address and suggested he stop by Thursday evening, had seemed forward but too specific to ignore. The address he included was mine. I called Andrea that night and told her everything clearly and without softening it, because she needed to understand what was happening. She listened without interrupting and then said, "What are we doing Thursday?" That question was the most useful thing anyone said to me throughout the entire situation, I filed a report with my local police department's non-emergency line describing account compromise and the use of my home address in communications with strangers. The officer I spoke with took it seriously and noted it would be on file. I called my building's front desk and told them someone might arrive Thursday, claiming to know me. Then I went back to Greg. I read the screenshot of the conversation he'd sent with the specific attention I give to something that's supposed to look genuine but wasn't generated by the person it's attributed to. The writing style was close to mine, close enough that someone who'd never spoken to me would accept it. But the details were wrong. The profile had me in marketing rather than financial analysis. It had me training for a race I had no interest in running. But what stood out most was a recurring phrase that appeared 3 times in the fake exchange. I tend to think that, followed by a confident statement about preferences or opinions. I don't use that construction. I went back through every message I'd ever sent on the original account, and it wasn't there. I pulled the messages I'd saved from a former match I'd blocked about 6 weeks before I deleted the account. A man who'd gotten aggressive when my response times slipped, who'd sent a cascade of unanswered messages before I ended the conversation. His profile was deleted now. But in my saved screenshots of our exchange, the phrase appeared in his second message. I tend to think that people who take 3 hours to reply aren't really interested. Same construction, same verbal habit. That wasn't confirmation. It was enough to make me feel certain in the way that logic and instinct sometimes arrive at the same place simultaneously. Greg and I exchanged several messages over the next 2 days. He was embarrassed and cooperative, and I was grateful for both. On Wednesday evening, he sent me something that changed the shape of the whole situation. He'd received a new message from the fake account that morning, a meeting location. A cafe I'd been to dozens of times, about 6 blocks from my apartment. A place I'd tagged in photos on my public social media, going back 2 years. The message told him to be there Thursday at 7 and said I was looking forward to finally meeting in person. Andrea received a message that same Wednesday evening. It came through a platform she used publicly, visible through photos I was tagged in. The message included screenshots, formatted correctly, plausible looking, of what appeared to be a conversation between me and another woman, suggesting that I was meeting someone at a cafe Thursday evening, while telling Andrea I wasn't seeing anyone else. The screenshots were fabricated. The conversation they claimed to capture had never happened. But they were constructed well enough that a person seeing them cold, without context, would have questions. She showed them to me within minutes of receiving them, which is the only reason they didn't do the damage they were intended to do. I sat with that for a moment. Greg had been directed to the cafe. Andrea had been handed a reason to go there in a state of hurt and suspicion. And I'd received, through a forwarded contact I didn't recognize, an anonymous message suggesting I should come to the cafe and explain myself in person. 3 people. 3 different false versions of the same event. The same location. The same evening. Each of us carrying a story designed to make us distrust the others. Whether the point was to provoke a confrontation, to damage my relationship with Andrea in a way that wouldn't recover, or to create enough chaos that something else could happen amid the confusion. The architecture of it was deliberate and specific. Andrea and I compared every piece of what we'd each received. Greg and I went through the full timeline together over the phone. By Thursday afternoon, all 3 of us understood what had been built, and none of us were walking into it. I contacted the cafe directly and spoke with the shift manager, explaining that someone had been directing people there under false pretenses connected to my identity. She thanked me and said she'd have staff aware. Greg stayed home. Andrea and I spent Thursday evening at her apartment, going through everything we had and rebuilding the timeline from the beginning. A person matching the former match's general description, height, build, a jacket I'd seen in his profile photos, was reported by the cafe manager as having been in the cafe around 7, staying for about 20 minutes and leaving. The manager described him as someone who seemed to be waiting for people who didn't arrive. I passed that detail to the officer handling my report as supplementary information, nothing more. The platform removed the compromised account within 48 hours of my identity complaint submission. They confirmed the account had been restored from a deactivated state and accessed by an unrecognized device, but they provided no additional technical specifics. What the situation did to Andrea and me is harder to describe than any of the external events. She knew the screenshots were fabricated. She understood that intellectually from the first hour. But fabricated evidence is still evidence your mind has processed, and processed things leave marks. There were 2 or 3 weeks where something between us was slightly off. Not broken, not hostile, just strained in a way that felt like a bruise we were both trying not to press. We talked about it directly several times, which helped. We're still together, but I want to be honest that it costs something, and that was specifically the point. 6 days after the platform removed the account, a blank account messaged me through Instagram. No profile photo, no posts, no followers, and no identifying information. The message contained 2 words. Still here. I screenshotted it, added it to the file I'd been building, and forwarded it to the officer on my report. Then I sat in my kitchen and looked at my phone and thought about the level of sustained patience required to keep going after every escalation had failed. Not impulsive, not random, patient. That's what I keep coming back to. Not the breach itself, not the fabricated screenshots, not the Thursday setup, the patience, the willingness to keep going. I documented everything, and I kept the file current. That's what I know how to do. Story 5. She asked me to pick her up. I moved to Phoenix in August, which means by October, I'd been there 10 weeks and had established a fairly thin social infrastructure. I knew my coworkers. I knew my immediate neighbors by sight. I knew where the good grocery store was relative to my apartment. Beyond that, I was still filling in the map. I'm not someone who has trouble talking to people. I'm 29, reasonably social. I'm good in a room. But good in a room only matters if there's a room to be in, and I hadn't found my rooms yet. So when my coworker Jake suggested I try one of the apps as a way to meet people, and just meet people, no pressure, I figured it made sense. I was clear about that in my profile. Exploring the city, looking to meet interesting people, not in a rush. Her name was Kayla. Her profile was short and confident, which I liked. 26, property management, Phoenix her whole life. 3 photos, rooftop bar, sunrise hike, casual car selfie. Her bio said she was tired of people who treated spontaneity like a personality flaw. I matched with her on a Wednesday and messaged the same day. She was fast and funny. Her responses came back in minutes, and they were good. She teased me about my limited knowledge of the city, with enough affection that it didn't feel mean. She asked about my job, my neighborhood, whether I'd been to specific parts of town yet. When I said I hadn't made it to the east side much, she said I was genuinely missing out and listed 3 things I needed to do before I'd earned the right to have an opinion about Phoenix. I told her I'd take the list seriously. We talked about meeting early. She suggested a Saturday afternoon, an outdoor market in a busy part of the city, easy and public. I said that worked, and we set a time of 11:30. Saturday morning at 10:22, she texted. Her car was making a noise she didn't trust. She said she'd been putting off getting it looked at, and now she was paying for that decision. She asked if there was any chance I could swing by and pick her up. She'd Venmo me for gas. It was completely okay if I couldn't. She just figured she'd ask. She sent an address in Chandler. She said she was so sorry. It was a believable inconvenience. Cars make noises. I said, sure, and left by 10:50. Before I backed out of my parking space, I texted Jake. I told him where I was going, who I was meeting, and sent him the address she'd given me. He sent back a thumbs up. At the time, that felt like enough. I got to the complex at 11:15. It was a mid-size property. 2 buildings, 5 stories each, arranged around a central courtyard. Covered parking structure on the right side. The address she'd given was Building B, Unit 214. I pulled into the visitor row, texted her that I'd arrived, and waited. She replied immediately, "Coming down in a few, just finishing up. Sorry." I sat in the car. The complex was quiet for a Saturday late morning. That struck me as mildly odd, but not alarming. A few cars in the main lot. The covered structure was fuller. One other vehicle in the visitor row, empty. A man was leaning against the wall near the stairwell entrance for Building B. He was on his phone. He'd been there when I pulled in. 5 minutes passed. I texted Kayla, "Take your time, no rush." She said, "2 more minutes, promise." The man near the stairwell wasn't on his phone anymore. The screen was dark, and he was holding it at his side, but he was facing the visitor row now. Not scrolling, not waiting for something on the screen, just facing the row. I looked at the covered structure. Second row from the front, a car backed into a space, a dark SUV, engine off. The windshield was tinted but not enough to hide a glow. Someone inside had a phone screen on, the light low and intermittent, and they were positioned with the front of the vehicle pointed toward the visitor row. The man near the stairwell and the person in the SUV were not in an accidental spatial relationship. They were at 2 different angles that converged on the same point. The point was the visitor row. The point was where I was parked. My phone buzzed. "Kayla, hey, actually, can you come to the side entrance? My roommate's asleep. The front buzzer is loud. I'll let you in from inside." I looked at the building. The side entrance would be around the corner, out of sight line of the visitor row, away from the main lot, away from any clear line of vision from the street. I put the car in drive. Not reverse. Drive, because I'd angled in slightly and needed to pull forward before I could exit. As I moved forward, the man near the stairwell took 2 steps toward the lot, not walking purposefully, just 2 steps, like a reflex that started before he could decide whether to complete it. I swung toward the exit and left. I called Jake while I was still on the surface streets. I told him I was heading back, that something hadn't felt right, and that I'd explain when I saw him. He said, "Okay," and didn't push me. I appreciated that. I got home, made coffee, and opened the internet. I looked up the apartment complex using the address she'd given me, found the property management company, found a publicly listed contact number, and called it. The leasing office was closed Saturdays, but a maintenance line forwarded to an on-call number. The woman who answered confirmed when I asked about Building B that Unit 214 was currently vacant and in the process of being prepped for a new tenant. It had been unoccupied for about 6 weeks. Kayla had sent me to an empty unit. I reported her profile. I wrote a description of the complex, the 2 men I'd seen, their positions, the side entrance request, the vacant unit, and my belief that the setup was designed to move someone away from visibility. The profile was removed within about 60 hours. I told Jake the full story over lunch the following week. He got quiet in the middle of it and then said that his coworker, David, someone he sat 3 desks away from, someone I'd met once at a happy hour, had been through something similar 2 months before I arrived in Phoenix. Different profile name, different photos, same basic structure. Car trouble, unfamiliar complex, side entrance, come inside. David had gone inside. He was fine, physically. He'd gotten out of the building fast when he realized the woman he was meeting didn't seem to exist. But he'd left his car unlocked in the visitor row while he was inside, and when he got back to it, his phone, wallet, and sunglasses were gone. The car itself was still there. They hadn't needed the car, apparently. David hadn't reported it. He'd been embarrassed. He was also new to Phoenix at the time. He'd moved out from the same city I had, actually, which made me go quiet when Jake said it. 2 transplants, both new to the city, both without the kind of established local network that notices when you're somewhere you shouldn't be. That wasn't coincidence. Profiles targeting new arrivals, people still figuring out the geography, still without someone close enough to miss them immediately, were looking for something that isolation provides. A longer window before anyone starts asking questions. I still use the app. Phoenix turned into a real home faster than I expected, and I've built actual friendships here now. But when I get a last-minute request to change locations, or to come to an entrance I can't see from the street, or to park somewhere that puts me out of view, I don't negotiate with it, I just don't go. 5 situations, 5 different cities, 5 different setups, 5 different methods, but the same foundation underneath all of them. Someone used the appearance of familiarity to manufacture trust, and then used that trust to get closer than they had any right to be. The people in these stories weren't careless. They were ordinary adults doing something ordinary. The threat didn't come from the apps themselves. It came from the patience of people who understood that a few weeks of conversation can make a stranger feel like someone you already know, and that feeling can be exploited. First meetings in public spaces. A friend who knows where you're going. Photos without embedded geography. And a willingness to trust the specific concrete moment that doesn't add up. Not paranoia, just attention. If these stories stayed with you, subscribe to Mind After Dark. We're here every week with accounts like these, grounded, realistic, and told by people who lived through them. Because the most dangerous kind of familiarity is the kind that was built on purpose. Mind After Dark. We'll see you next time.